Segregation has always been a big deal in Israel. The regime there usually tries to cover it up, but this time it's different. For the first time in Israel's short history, 3 Israeli hospitals have admitted that they segregate Jewish and Arab women given birth. Hadassah University Hospital, Haimek Hospital, and Soroka Medical Center have admitted in February that segregation of Arab and Jewish women is their policy. Another hospital, the Galilee Medical Center, is also accused of segregating patients, but has so far denied the accusations. The incident came into light after a lawsuit filed by 4 Arab women in 2018. The women have recordings of conversations with hospital staff showing segregation in full throttle in Israeli hospitals. They're demanding 20,000 shekels or $5,500 each in compensation for being racially profiled and insulted by the segregation.
One has to distinguish between formal segregation and what actually happens. Now, on paper, formally, usually there is no segregation. And in theory, Arabs, Palestinian Arabs and Israeli Jews are supposed to use the same places, the same facilities, etc., with no distinction. But in practice, that is not the case. In practice, the Jewish part of the population, it really is mainly the Jewish part of the population, discriminates against what they call Arabs. They don't like to use the term Palestinians. So they don't really want to live in the same areas, they don't want to use the same facilities, and we have an example in these 3-4 major hospitals.
Jews and Arabs in Israel don't attend the same schools, go to the same youth movements, and usually do not intermarry. According to figures released by Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics, there were 1.5 million Arabs in Israel's roughly 9 million population at the start of 2019. Most were Muslims, Christians, or Druze. That's 21% of Israel's population. Despite holding Israeli citizenship, many Arabs say that their communities from the north to the south face discrimination in areas such as health, education, and housing. They complain of regime-backed racism that continues to threaten their lives.
للأسف الشديد نحن نشعر بأن الشارع الإسرائيلي يتوجه إلى العنصرية ولا التطرف أكثر وأكثر. يعني الآن نحن نجابه ومشاكل من هذا النوع لم نعهدها من قبل. وللأسف الشديد كلنا أمل كان إنه الانتخابات الأخيرة تفرز عن توجه جديد، ولكن هذا لم يحدث، وبالعكس بل زادت العنصرية والكراهية للعرب. ولكن زي ما قلت لك قبل، إحنا موجودين بهذه البلاد، إحنا مواطنين هاي البلاد، إحنا مواطنين أصلانيين بهاي البلاد، ومش رح نتركها مهما كانت الظروف، وبالعكس رح نكمل بنضالنا بكفاحنا من أجل تحقيق المساواة التامة والمحافظة على بقائنا ووجودنا وهويتنا.
Living standards and education are among the many institutions that Israeli Arabs lack.
هناك مشكلة مع المؤسسات الحكومية، وهناك مشكلة مع البلدية، إنه في إهمال للمواطنين العرب، وفي معاناة، في مشاكل بالسكن، في مشاكل بالتعليم وبالبنية التحتية، وهذه كلها مشاكل اللي بدها حلول، واحنا بنتأمل إنه أعضاء الكنيسة العرب يساهموا أيضا بإيجاد حلول لمثل هاي المشاكل.
In fact, several Israeli cities even banned the entrance of Israeli Arab workers from entering or working in schools. This is the case even in the capital, Tel Aviv.
هذا تحريض ضد الجمهور العربي. الجمهور العربي عرف دائما كيف يناضل بهامة مرفوعة بطرق شرعية مدنية. هذا هو طريق الجماهير العربية. الجماهير العربية موجودة في وضع صعب للغاية. هي أيضا جزء من الشعب العربي الفلسطيني قوميا، وهي أيضا مواطنة هنا، أي أن الدولة التي هي مواطنة بها في حالة حرب مع الشعب التي تنتمي إليه قوميا، ورغم ذلك هي اختارت طريق النضال الشرعي المدني. لهذا لا مكان للتحريض على هذه الجماهير العربية.
Some Jewish Israelis show a different view on the issue.
להבין את ההחלטה של עיריית תל אביב, זו החלטה מאוד מאוד קשה, זו החלטה שזה פוגע גם ביהודים וגם פוגע בערבים. אני יכול גם להבין אותם, יש לי ילדים שלומדים בבית הספר, יש לי ילדים שלומדים בגנים, ויש פחד גם מבחינת ההורים ששולחים את הילדים שלהם, ושיש פועלים, אם זה ערבים ואם זה יהודים, ואתה גם לא יכול להבדיל ביניהם, אתה נכנס לאיזושהי חששות וחרדות. אז אני יכול באיזשהו מקום להבין את העירייה שלעת עתה הם החליטו לעצור כרגע את הכניסה של פועלים ערבים.
The trend in segregation in Israel comes as no coincidence. The so-called nation-state law that was passed by the Israeli Knesset or parliament last year angered many Arab Israelis. The law declares only Jews have a right to self-determination in the nation-state of the Jewish people, thus rendering all other minorities as second-class citizens.
بالفعل قانون القومية والممارسات الأخيرة من الحكومة الإسرائيلية ساعدت في إيقاظ كثير من الناس اللي كانوا براهنوا على إنه هاي الدولة ممكن تكون دولة لجميع مواطنيها وتكون دولة عادلة. فبالفعل ممارسات الصهيونية أدت أكثر فأكثر، راح تؤدي كمان بالمستقبل لإيقاظ الناس من وهم إنه إحنا ممكن نكون جزء طبيعي من هذا الجسم.
Many believe that the nation-state law of Israel has emboldened segregation and a system of apartheid that treats those who are not of Jewish descent differently.
It's terrible. It's racist. It's unjust, and it confines the people on the who are being discriminated against to a much poorer, much more miserable, a much more unfortunate existence.
Not many people in Israel were happy about the law, even amongst Jews.
A lot of Israelis believe that they are entitled to be equal to us. It's the Jewish state, but the people that live here are entitled to be equal to us across the board, in education, in the army, in the universities, in the parliament, all over.
A new poll released by Israel Democracy Institute indicated that there is a strong anti-Arab sentiment among Israeli Jews, particularly among religious communities. In fact, 52% of respondents believe most Jews are better than most non-Jews. 63% of Israeli Arabs termed Israel an apartheid entity, according to a survey by the Israeli Hamadia newspaper. Another poll by Dialogue showed that 58% of Israelis believe Israel already practices apartheid.
It would seem that the vast majority of the Israeli population, unfortunately, supports parties and movements inside the state of Israel proper, in which which are in favor of the rules and the laws, especially this national law that was recently passed, that entrench the Jewish and give preferential treatment to the Jewish population. There was at one time about 40% of the Israeli population that were actively opposed to the discriminatory treatment of the Palestinian people, but we don't hear from them anymore, and I've heard anecdotally that many of them have simply packed up and gone back to Europe and North America, or if they could get a passport, to go move to Europe and North America, so that there's only a very small proportion of Jews inside of the state of Israel who speak up against this outrageous racist behavior against the Palestinian people.
The nation-state law is still in its infancy stage and continues to be implemented, with Zionist groups now calling to amend it in a bid to make life even harder for minorities in Israel. Only time can tell what role international